Many of us here in the room here. Let's press on. We'll now hear our second speaker for today. That's Dr. Yvonne Colomer. I do hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, ma'am. Yvonne Colomer is the Executive Director of the Triptolemos Foundation in Spain. She'll be speaking to us on plant production. You also have 10 minutes, ma'am. You have the floor. Yes, good afternoon. Now, when I was very kindly invited to speak to you here today, I asked myself what sort of added value I could provide, and I started asking myself a series of questions. And I'll now be trying to answer those questions as an EU citizen. Now, the Fundación Triptolemos has been working since 2002 for the development of sustainable food systems, and as such, we contribute to the development of the food system in the EU in order to help citizens have a healthy, sustainable diet. And for this, we have received a number of different recognitions from UNESCO, for instance, with the Chair of Science of Innovation for Sustainable Development, Global Food Production and Food Safety. Technological information for a sustainable food system must serve the citizen. It must ensure that they have a healthy, sustainable, affordable diet available to them. And for this, we need to ensure that innovation targets system developments. If we look now at the global food system as an expression of our essential biological needs, we see that it's very complex, multivariate, transversal, and articulated. We divide it into four main areas. The first has all of the elements that contribute to the availability and the accessibility of food. The second has to do with knowledge and behavior and culture. The third looks at the economy. And the fourth has to do with policies and legislation. Now, we need to understand that when it comes to growth and ensuring that the growth of society is harmonious, ethical, and sustainable, these four main areas need to be in balance, and they need to develop proportionately. And in that, science and innovation have a fundamental role to play. Business models that are responsible form the core of this, based on, as long as their activities are based on evidence. Now, one of the main activities that the Triptolemos Foundation carries out is drafting of scientific documents and papers that are based on evidence. We write reports on current issues. The idea is to raise awareness among society and legislators about the importance of science and technology in this world where climate change is so important. And within this framework, our foundation has prepared a document on food security and innovative tools with a focus on the sustainable food system, which I would like to share with you. Now, I'm not going to be giving you facts and figures in this presentation because I'm sure you have many of those already, but I would like to offer some reflections on today's topic. Science is based on demonstrating facts, explaining mechanism, and verifying that they can be repeated. And its dissemination is carried out in journals and other media that are assessed by the peers before publication. In science, opinions are not important. It is the facts and the data that really matter. Pseudoscience is based on opinions or emotions that are disseminated without being rigorously evaluated. And promoting alternative solutions without scientific base, we think, affects society as a whole negatively. Now, in our society, particularly more industrialized societies, we take it as a given that agriculture should be able to provide our needs better and more all the time without considerable effort. And for this reason, it stopped valuing agriculture as an activity. In just a few short years, we've gone from trust and full social recognition of agriculture to questioning of the activity. We're increasingly hearing allusions to for instance, the polluting effects of agricultural production, to the loss of biodiversity that it causes, to the lack of food security, then to the critical role that agriculture plays in supplying food to our people. Some 60 years ago, we can say that, or in the past 60 years, the population has multiplied by almost 2.5, while cereals production and other crop production in the same period has multiplied by 4. So we've gone from requiring a hectare of agricultural cultivation required to feed a person for a year to just 0.32% of a hectare. And it's estimated that 50% of all of these advances in production are due to genetic improvement. So we need to ask ourselves, will it be possible to continue with such increases in yields and productivity in a context of social sensitivity as we see it today? The answer to this question is yes, we can do this if we trust the proven science and take a system-based approach. And in this sense, gene editing has given rise to considerable interest. Now, at the same time, of course, we need to implement other new technologies that will ensure a more efficient use of our resources such as water, nutrients in the soil, and other, which can contribute to reducing the environmental impact of certain agricultural practices. The Nobel Prize in Chemistry for 2020 was awarded to two women, Emmanuelle Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna, for their research on the gene editing technique CRISPR-Cas9. Gene editing technologies that are based on CRISPR have great potential for helping us meet the challenges in agriculture. So this recognition on the part of the Swedish Academy of Science for this work represents an opportunity for agriculture, for medicine, and for the food industry in general. Gene editing means a democratization of technology, since even small and medium-sized producers can have access to this technology. Plants obtained by mutagenic gene editing, which does not introduce new genes, should not be considered GMOs or genetically modified organisms because there is no basis for this. Crop plants must be evaluated and regulating according to what they are, not according to how they have been produced. It is very important to note that with gene editing techniques, new genes are not introduced, and consequently, plants obtained through gene editing cannot be distinguishable by any means from those who are obtained without it. There would be no human or machine that could differentiate between them. And if we cannot distinguish between naturally occurring plants and plants that have given rise to through gene editing, then there should be distinction made between them. The EFCA's scientific assessment should be sufficient when determining how they should be regulated. There are no scientifically significant differences between mutant organisms attained by classical methods of mutagenesis or by gene editing. Recent advances in this technology are generating precise new tools to help us recover traditional crop varieties and produce new ones that will allow us to increase resilience of plant crops, produce healthier foods, and also more sustainable foods. This will be a reality in the next 5 to 10 years. The question is whether or not the European Union will decide to participate in these developments. The economic consequences of not doing so would be dramatic for the EU. Now, in the study that I was referring to at the beginning of my presentation, we took a number of examples, including tomatoes and banana production. Looking specifically at banana production worldwide, we see that it is the economic and food sustenance for more than 400 million people around the world. Banana crops are affected by the TR4 fungus that destroy harvests, and to date, we have not found any fungicide that has allowed us to control it. The application of CRISPR technology could be very encouraging in this area. Some of these challenges need quick answers, and as we've seen, CRISPR-Cas9 technology can provide these answers. If you take this from an international standpoint, we see there are already a number of countries that have decided that there's no need to regulate the plants produced by gene editing in the same way as those produced by transgenic techniques, and it is extremely important if we think about the implications of this. The EU is standing at a crossroads. The Green Deal strategy should be based on proven, evidence-based science and innovation with a systems-based approach. It's important that some of the obstacles that exist in the EU, many of which are administrative, should be eliminated. Because producers from other regions of the world are benefiting, and we're seeing that their products are being imported for consumption in our countries. And it would be ironic if agriculture, which is largely responsible for the development of our society, could not benefit from technological advances as other industrial sectors do. Many of these technologies which have been created by our own research groups in Europe. So just to conclude, let me say that the EU is a global agricultural power, but with very diverse cultural, geographical, and climate realities. To ensure the sustainability of our agriculture, farmers must have the freedom to choose the tools and practices that are best suited to their specific needs and agricultural environments. And excluding tools that can help them do their job properly or contribute to this within a systems-based approach could prove dangerous. It is only from the approach of a sustainable global food system that considers the availability of food, the accessibility thereof, the economy, policies, and culture, and ensuring a proper harmony and balance between all of these factors, with the support of science, technology, and responsible business activities, that we can face the food challenges of the 21st century with any degree of guarantees. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vielen herzlichen
Thank you very much, Dr. Colomer.
Now, Dr. Colomer, for 5 minutes, please. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. I've noted a number of very interesting questions. My thanks to you for raising these. We see that this has given rise to considerable debate, and I will try and answer them as best I can. Now, in my presentation, I really focused on the definition of science. We need to agree, I think, on the least common denominator in order to find solutions. Science is based on demonstrating facts, explaining mechanisms, and proving that they can be repeated. Pseudoscience is something different altogether. We can't really define that. Now, if we accept this definition of science as our basis, then I think we can all agree on what comes next. In science, it has to be repeatable in any part of the world, which means you have to believe that it represents facts. So we need to have faith in our scientists and in our institutions, that we reach these common denominators that we can all accept. Now, there was one question about how we can know whether these are gene-edited products. Well, that is actually one of the key questions. Plants that are obtained through gene editing, mutagenic gene editing, do not introduce new genes. So you could get the same result through conventional technologies, and these cannot be distinguished in terms of the end result from those that are conventionally produced. That's why we insist that these gene-edited plants should be regulated according to what they are, and not according to how they have been produced. Also, we need to ensure we don't confuse gene editing and mutagenesis, because they're not genetically modified organisms. We cannot just throw it all into the same bag, because this would lead to considerable confusion. Another important point for me. In the EU, we know we have some hundreds of millions of consumers and citizens, but we live on a very big planet and things are evolving and changing. And ultimately, we may find ourselves importing products from other parts of the world. And that's my point, is that it would be quite ironic that technologies that our researchers had developed would then be applied in other parts of the world, and we would end up consuming those products produced elsewhere. And that's something that needs to be kept in mind. Let me also add, all of these technologies need to be developed in parallel. None of them should replace the other. They can all work towards the same goal. all these different technological advances of all different types can be used with the necessary controls and tests and approvals, of course. But they all will be useful. We're facing a huge challenge. Climate change is a fact, and many things could happen if we don't listen to the science. Now, the EU, as I said, has many different cultural, geographical, and climate realities. And let me say, I'm speaking to you from Barcelona in Southern Europe, and it's very different here. Our climate perspectives, our production and consumption patterns, I don't even think about the post-pandemic period and how things will change there, but it's going to be very different from what the perspective might be from other latitudes. And ultimately, all of us need to eat, and that is the challenge that we face. And that's what brings me to this food system-based approach. That's the challenge we face, to consider everything and all the various areas that together make up the system. Now, both large and small producers and farmers will have a role to play. All of them have to make a living, and our citizens also need to have access to the right food, which is safe and produced sustainably, and so on. Let me just say that our foundation is currently drafting a report that looks at the impact of the EU's Green Deal on its citizens. We're thinking it should be ready within the next 2 or 3 months or so. And we will make it available to you. We'd be more than happy to do so. We can make sure that you get a copy of that report, or this study of the impact of the Green Deal from a food system-based approach. We think it could be very interesting. There was another question as well that asked about the EU becoming the museum of agriculture. Well, of course, we cannot miss the boat. We cannot afford to fall behind. We will regret it if we do, and we'll see it will have huge economic consequences. Again, everybody here has a role to play. Sustainable agriculture is a systems-based approach, and our farmers need tools that will allow them to make a living as they produce food for us within this sustainable framework, and of course governed by the necessary legislation. Thank you.
Vielen herzlichen.
Thank you